Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can start, Pooja.
Yes, ma'am. Give me a second. Yeah. So yes, good evening, everyone. To all our viewers from YouTube and also all our panelists and respected Revati Ashok, our B.PAC CEO and Honorable Trustee, and Manjula, we are DULT Commissioner, IAS, and Additional Chief Secretary of Government, DULT, and Professor Ashish Verma, Associate Professor, Transportation Systems Engineering, Sustainable Transportation Lab, Department of Civil Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, and Satya Sankaran, our bicycle mayor of Bengaluru, and Sudeep, Head Integrated Transport Program, WRI, India Ross Center. And yes, today we all are here for a report release on Livelihood Cyclists Survey, which was very unique of its kind, and which was initiated in this year, this year, February, with definitely with the help of our B-Clip leaders and as well as Peace Auto Association auto drivers who actually administered it on ground. Along with the DULT, we collaborated this survey and have done this research and study on it. So now I would request Mrs. Revati Ashok to set a context on Livelihood Cyclist Survey and what was the need of it and how the notion of the survey started, and to introduce about the notion behind the survey.
I think first of all, I would like to welcome Madam Manjula, Commissioner Dalt, for having thought about it. She's the person who thought about it, and she's been most progressive, and she wanted something like this to be done. And B.PAC has been very proud to associate ourselves with Dalt on this. And we are very happy to be releasing this report. We've been wanting to release this for some time. But finally, we could do it only virtually because of the pandemic. We had various plans to release it at various points in time. But we are all delighted to have all of you here, the audience. We hope this is going to be a significant change, a departure from the past, where a lot of focus has been there on the kind of infrastructure which is required. But it is the vision of our commissioner. She wanted to know exactly what a very marginalized section of society which needs cycling most, what are they thinking and what are their views. And we are really pleased to bring this survey results to everybody. The unique thing about it is we trained people who are from the same sections of society to run the survey for us. And that is what is very, very unique, because they could reach out to the section, they could empathize with the people, and we really had to catch hold of these people. How do you find livelihood cyclists? That itself was a challenge. And to get to this point, we really depended on a bunch of auto drivers whom we trained, and who actually reached out to these cyclists when they were actually cycling to work. So it was not an easy task, especially when we had to interview women. Of course, the number of women cyclists are very few in number. It's only 8%. But it was very, very difficult and challenging to interview, because these people had to stop them on the way to work and to gain the trust of people. But the fact that they came from the same strata of society sort of helped that we could get to all these people. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for anybody to reach out to all of them. So we are very pleased to bring out this unique study, and we have over 600 respondents. It's one of the largest of its kind. And I hope with this, Dalt and Bangalore will set the benchmark for others. And we have some very interesting insights, which focus not just on building core infrastructure for cycling, but other supportive items like communication and safety infrastructure, etc. So I won't steal that thunder, but I will allow Madam Manjula to say a few words, opening remarks, and then I will turn it over to Pooja, who will run the brief findings of the survey.
Yeah. Thank you, Revati, and thank you, B.PAC. As you correctly said, it's not an easy survey to roll out and complete, because we are, sometimes people, livelihood cyclists, first of all, cyclists themselves are not visible to many people on the streets, either because they don't want to see or whatever reason. So, and among them, the livelihood cyclists, who have no other choice but to take their cycle to, go cycling for their work, they are harder to find. So it's a quite an unique study, and I think only B.PAC could pull it off, mainly because of the fact that you have this grassroots level people. And I also like the fact that, you used auto drivers, because this thought never occurred to us that, we always think surveyors, enumerators are all students, or, some people who are educated, but we never think auto driver who is going everywhere and who knows the neighborhood very well could also be a potential enumerator. Thanks for opening our eyes to this fact. And probably we would also kind of take advantage of that, maybe in any other survey that we roll out in future in DULT. I'm really happy with the findings of the survey, of course, which you will share with all of us. But we had a advantage of going through it a bit in advance, but I wouldn't disclose any of it. But I would say it's a very interesting study, which kind of throws light on the fact that sometimes what we think is obvious may not be so. It depends on the perspective of the user, and we need to look at things from the perspective of the users. Thank you so much, Revati.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Pooja.
Yes, thank you,
All
Manjula.
yours.
Yes. Thank you, Manjula ma'am and Revati ma'am. Yes, so let me not take much time onto it and start into a quick insight presentation. I'll just share my screen. Yes, is my screen visible to all?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, jumping into the Livelihood Cyclists Survey insights, of course, we all just talked about the aim of the study, and we all of us wanted to cater and understand the challenges of livelihood cyclists in Bengaluru, and to understand their travel pattern, what is the important motivators for them currently to run on livelihood for a livelihood cyclist, and also their concerns regarding traffic, parking facilities, and other infrastructure. This survey was conducted in all the 8 zones of Bengaluru. We tried to make capture from all the zones, and totally we have got 604 respondents who are pure livelihood cyclists. As we have already mentioned, we did it in collaboration with DULT and also our B.CLIP leaders and Peace Auto Association auto drivers who actually administered the questionnaire and on collecting the data in the month of February 2021. And as I mentioned, there were 604 respondents, and these respondents were divided into 2 major categories. One who are purely livelihood cyclists right now, and another 16% we have also taken the survey of those people who can likely be on livelihood cyclists. Like currently they are not, they are the non-cyclists, but given some opportunity, some infrastructure, or what is that which is stopping them being using a bicycle. Not a normal person like us, probably from for the use of livelihood, who can be on a cycle. So these were the 2 categories from of the respondents. So one, it is 83.94, around 84% were livelihood cyclists, and 16% are non-livelihood cyclists. Non-cyclists were likely to be on livelihood cyclists. Coming to a profile of the respondents, we got around 92% of male dominant and 8% were women. There were major reasons from our enumerators that they were few in number. First of all, women's livelihood cyclists were few in number. And second, if they were also, they were kind of reluctant to talk to the enumerator. understanding the pandemic issue was also going on, and definitely adding on how to pick those livelihood cyclists on the road, and also adding to this pandemic situation, talking to any random enumerator was also a challenge there. So these were the two things. Maybe first of all, they were few in numbers, and second, they were kind of reluctant to give the survey as well. And coming to the age group, around 82% of the respondents were from the age group of 25 to 54. Definitely from 18 plus, the age group started as they are running for a livelihood. And largest quotient of the respondents or age group lie in 35 to 45 years, that is around 35%. And coming to occupation, we had different kind of occupation, divided into different kind of occupation. One, jobs; second, unskilled workers, PT shops, small businesses, skilled workers. And majorly, when I'm talking about jobs, we included delivery boys, salesmen, supervisors, guards, peons, from the jobs, that was around 37%, and unskilled workers and PT shops from 20%, and skilled workers amounting to 17%. And now talking about some key insights of livelihood cyclists. Around 507 livelihood cyclists, that is of 84%, which I quoted earlier. We tried to capture the routes that they normally take while during their commute, their origin, destination, and the route. And with the help of this, our the ULT GIS team helped us to capture the data on where the livelihood cyclists, our respondents, were found majorly in Bomnalli, Bengaluru South, Bengaluru West, Mahadevpura zones of Bengaluru. These are the few zones where we find the more respondents, livelihood cyclists, on the like the concentration of them in the Bengaluru. And coming to their primary mode of transport, about 96% of them were using bicycle as their primary mode of transport. When I say primary mode of transport here, I mean that their first mode is through bicycle. Their journey gonna start by bicycle, out of which in that 73% of them used it for the entire commute, and 27% of them used it as a first and last mile. Like they start from the house through a bicycle, and they park it somewhere and take a public transport or some other mode of transport, and that is the first, and they are just using it for first and last mile. Once we also try to capture the data on the basis of monthly income versus total cost per month. Here we could definitely see that 92% of the respondents whose monthly income is less than 5,000 spend up to rupees 500 per month, whereas 75% of the respondents whose monthly income is about 5,000 to 10,000, they spend up to rupees 500. Like you can see that there is a decrease in the percentage of people spending within 500 rupees as their income status is improving on. Like the people, the respondents whose monthly income is more than 10,000, they are spending about, they are spending up to 500. Only 65% of them are spending only up to 500. This is for their entire commute per month. And next, understanding on the frequency of cycle usage. 96% of the respondents use their cycles for daily commute, out of which unskilled workers are using it every day. Like 100% of them are using it every day, and lowest coming from the skilled workers. And understanding on the reasons, what is a major reason for cycling? 84% of the respondents cited saving money as one of the main reasons, whereas less than 26%, around 25 odd percentage, had the reason on health benefits. Here we had different multiple options on given to the respondents, because there might not be a single reason for cycling, so there were option for multiple reasons. So the highest came up to be on saving money. And coming to the distance traveled from primary job location from the residence to primary job location, around 72% of the respondents had to travel less than 4 kilometers. So definitely, as we all know, bicycle is a mode which can be used for a short distance. So 72% of them are using for less than 4 kilometer, whereas distance covered by sales and marketing, here now not only to reaching their primary job location, they use it for their livelihood purpose, like probably vegetable lender, or or somebody who is a delivery man. So there here 95% of the respondents said that they travel within 10 kilometers, that is 0.40 to 4 kilometers around 73%, 5 to 8 we see around 22%, and while 5% of them had to travel more than 8 kilometers. And coming to key insights on their onward and return journey, here is one of the important insight that most of our livelihood cyclists were starting early in the morning and ending up late in the night. So around 46% of them are starting around 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 43% from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Whereas we can see the return journey going high around 12 to 6 and 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. So they're going to start their journey as early as 6 and end it by around till late night around 9 p.m. to 12 p.m. So which is one of the important insight. And key insights on their challenges. What are the challenges they are facing? Around 62% of the respondents said that absence of proper infrastructure, dedicated cycle lanes as the major concern, whereas 50% of them feel unsafe while cycling. And there are people who still say on 30% stated on a bad weather, definitely it rains at odd time and all such things. And 20% are definitely worried about cycle theft, and 13% are about the unruly behavior of drivers, other motor vehicles. And again, we also try to mark what are the unsafe locations which these livelihood cyclists see in on their route. So we and it actually comes up with like correlates with the most highly congested dense traffic areas in Bengaluru, that is Hudi Circle, ITPL Main Road, Kundanalli Junction, Belandur Signal, and Sarjapur Main Road. So these were the few major points which have been highlighted here on the unsafe locations identified by the livelihood cyclist respondents in the survey. And coming to the encouraging factors, there were top three factors that would encourage them for cycling. One, designated cycle lanes, two, better street lights, and three, parking space. So here, surprisingly, around 80% of the respondents cited better street lights as extremely important or very important factor. And 45% of them felt dedicated cycle lanes, and 25% felt the need of parking space as extremely important or very important. And coming to the willingness, definitely most of them, like if the infrastructure is going to go better and that all their challenges are being then probably around 97% of them are willing to use a bicycle for every day. And coming on the insights from the other section, that is on non-cyclists who are likely to use for livelihood. If not cycle, what is the mode they are using? 70% of them of the non-bicycle user rely on BMTC, and only 1% are relying on metro. So the mode of transport which they are currently preferring is BMTC is the mode. And the reason for not cycling, it's again around the lack of infrastructure. They feel unsafe, a bad weather condition. It's almost similar to the cyclists. The challenges what they are facing, the same reasons. And what are the encouraging factors? Again, we see almost a similar language here. On 70% said better street lighting was extremely important, and 48% extremely important as dedicated cycle lanes, and 26 on parking space. So both of them have the similar language on the encouraging factors, that is street light becomes the utmost important, and then the designated cycle lanes and the parking spaces. And coming to the gender specific analysis, as I've already mentioned, only 8% of our respondents are women. But just to see what is the gender specific analysis, if we can take it off, we could see majorly on age factor, second on occupation, and the reason for cycling. These are the three major major aspects where we can see some analysis or some differences. That is, the large current amongst women is likely to use cycle lies in the age group of 18 to 24, that is 42%, whereas in men it is higher in 35 to 44 years. And coming to occupation, we see women, most of the women who are livelihood cyclists currently, they are coming from the category of unskilled workers, whereas under men we see also from the jobs like salesmen and or delivery jobs. In these sector we have around 39%. So, and coming to reasons for not cycling under women, here 71% of them feel were of the opinion of that they feel unsafe while cycling in case of women, whereas in case of men it is 75% of them cited on lack of infrastructure. So women are more concerned about safety, where that is around 71%. Along with that, they do have concern about weather, infrastructure, but the most dominant one seen here is about safety. And in men, it is more dominant about lack of infrastructure. So concluding all of the insights from our survey, definitely cycling is a major mode of transport for all of the livelihood cyclists here, but affordability is the major concern. Most of them here are for the health and environment conscious. They are not here for the health and environment conscious, but more for a saving money purpose. Like the poor economic status is the major reason for livelihood cyclists to be on cycles now. And women cyclists are much lower in number as compared to men, as safety is the key factor consideration here for women. And building dedicated cycling lanes is not just enough to encourage cycling as a preferred option. Along with that, we need to look into other options as well, like investing on better street lights, safer junction crossing, better enforcement of lane disciplines, and also dedicated cycle lanes as well. And also parking becomes one of the important criteria here. And budgetary allocation for communication, like as we already mentioned, most of them here are for the reason of saving money or because of their economic status. As in when the economic status like increases or gets into better, there are high chances of them shifting into other modes of transport, which might be a motor transport. And we need to definitely work on changing the narrative that currently cycling is perceived as poor person's commute, which has to be an aspirational mode of commute, or not cycling as out of necessity, as cycling for health and fitness and environment friendly mode of commute. So, and also we need to work on special schemes to encourage women. Currently in from our survey we have got women percentage in at 8%. At least we need to work on short term goals as 33% in next 3 years or something like that. So these were some of the insights and key recommendations from our survey now. And definitely I would like to open it for our panel discussion and probably look into more different kind of recommendations which our panelists can get onto the table. And and we all together, along with the commissioner and government of Karnataka, we can work together to get more of the livelihood cyclists safer on our Bengaluru roads. And to access our full report, you can log into our website, and I will also share the link on the both YouTube and Zoom platform. Yes, now I would like to open it up to the panel discussion. So today's let me introduce again everyone. Today our moderator will be Revati Ashok, Honorable CEO and Honorable Trustee of B.PAC. And we have our Commissioner DULT Manjula V, IAS, and also Secretary for Government of Karnataka. And Satya Sankaran, our Bicycle Mayor, and Ashish Verma, Sir, Professor IASC, and also Sudeep from WRI. Yes, over to you, Revati ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pooja. Maybe I would just call on Madam Manjula to just make some few opening remarks based on the survey itself, and then I will open it up to some, I will have some questions. Ma'am, would you like to make some quick comments on the findings?
So thank you, Revati. The findings kind of of course, they also reinforce the fact that whether a person is a livelihood cyclist or a person working in an IT company or anybody, safe infrastructure is paramount for them. So that is what comes out very, very strongly. So having dedicated lanes, cycle lanes, is something which I think most people and most surveys and in other surveys too, we find that's a requirement. Mainly because people feel unsafe traveling or riding a cycle along with the traffic. So that is something which is a given. But one thing which is interesting that came out is about the street lighting. And that is probably, if you ask women and if you ask people who, constantly like the livelihood cyclists who cycle from morning to till and who come back late in the evening, for them, the good lighting is what is important. And this is surprisingly also corroborated by the other studies that we did as a part of sustainable urban mobility accords, where a lot of people talked about street lights and stray dogs as inhibiting factors for walking or cycling on the streets. So yeah, I think there are always other factors too we need to keep in mind. It's not just the infrastructure, but we also need to look at lighting as an important thing, and also about the junctions improvement, as you mentioned. That's also important, because if you cannot cross properly, nobody would take the cycling as an option. So good connectivity, good infrastructure, good crossing, these are all there to be done. But these are all something which we need to incorporate in our plans, which we are doing slowly, but probably we need to kind of improve it and scale it up much faster. And that requires really a lot of push behind we're promoting cycling and all forms of active mobility. So that is what we luckily in Bangalore, we have a good community of cyclists. So we do hope in in the future, there is also change of kind of outlook, and there is more support. I see that even today, because it was not so maybe 6 years, 7 years back. So there is greater support, but the support for actually giving up carriageway width, that is what is needed. Because we know that our roads are so narrow that we can't put a cycle lane unless we take away some carriage lane width. And that is where we need everybody to say, doesn't matter whether my car gets tight. Even if I'm traveling by car, my car may take a longer period, it may get stuck in traffic, but we would require space for the cycle lanes. I stop here and then probably I'll join again.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Professor Verma, can I take ask you the next question? You have done a lot of work on the area of urban mobility and infrastructure. Any quick comments on the findings from the survey? And Madam Manjula has already spoken about the investment in infrastructure. And apart from that, looking at other supportive infrastructure also being equal focus while we work on cycle lanes. Do you have any quick thoughts on this?
Thanks, Revati. Hope I am audible.
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to you and of course to DLT for initiating this survey. I have seen this kind of survey and insights first time, just focusing on livelihood cyclists. So it's definitely a very good step in the right direction. As Madam Manjula also mentioned, I think some of the aspects are quite common in terms of the factors influencing adoption of cycles or continue to use cycles, the infrastructure. I think for these livelihood cyclists, of course, they are captive riders. So we are not focusing on them from the point of view of improving traffic congestion. But essentially, as the survey also reveals, affordability and safety and security are the key aspects that they also feel important. The survey respondents also feel important in using cycle and adopting it as a commute mode. If I reflect on the studies that we have been doing on promoting sustainable modes I think having higher mode share of walking and cycling fits very well into the larger picture of how you sustain the city in terms of a system that is more equitable and accessible to all, and also in the larger context of climate change action plans, air quality action plans, or if you talk of improving livability and quality of life. So, it really fits very well into this whole scheme that we essentially are talking at the urban level. Looking at the recommendations, some of the things that we can do, probably we haven't covered the school-going children among these households in this survey. Maybe their requirement and their issues, because they are either dependent on foot or cycle to go to their schools, could be also interesting to do in future to understand their requirement and how their commute needs are linked to the household earners within these low-income households. That could also bring some useful insights further in targeting some specific interventions. Other aspects that we can possibly look, all the recommendations that are there in the report I was glancing through are definitely good. Integration with public transport, because other than cycle and walk, of course, a lot of them are dependent on public transport. And again, affordability remains an issue for them. In many cases, their travel distances may not be within the acceptable cycling distances. Enabling and improving their accessibility for longer travels also. In many cases, their place of work may be quite far. They might be in the city center, while because of their lower income status, they may be staying quite away in outskirts. Maybe in future, with the urban rail systems coming up, the new lines of metro rail systems coming up, we can keep these aspects in right in the planning and design stage. That how do we integrate cycling with these public transport systems? Probably that could also be a strategy that we can put forth. The other aspect that we can look in is the design of cycles. I think we have discussed it many times, especially in case of livelihood cyclists. Since they are traveling for livelihood, some may be vendors. They need to carry certain things every day while going to their place where they are doing vending, or any other kind of unskilled or semi-skilled work that they are doing. They need to carry certain things, certain baggage with them. With women, most of them usually wear traditional dresses. These specific requirements, if they can be improved in the designs of cycles to make it a more easy and seamless mode for them to use, it will make and improve their comfort level while using cycles. I think these are few points I had just to start with. Maybe I'll come back later on with some more things. Thank you, Reti.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Verma. Sudeep, I will take the next question with you. I'd like to know, we spoke a little bit about gender and cycling. I know WRI also has done some work on gender and transport. Would you have some thoughts on what could be done to encourage more women? And in particular, do you think some schemes would be relevant that will encourage and motivate women and girls to use cycles as a mode of transport?
Right. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Revati. I think that's one critical point that I've been actually looking at the report and I've been pondering about as well. So when we look at the lack of women cyclists on our streets, I mean, cyclists itself are quite low, and then of that, finding women cyclists on the street is a really difficult task, and that is an indication of the difference in challenges between between them and the male counterparts. The challenges faced by women cyclists are multifaceted. Access to a cycle itself is one significant aspect. So just for this, for a strata of society which uses cycles as a livelihood, access to a cycle itself, buying a cycle itself, is a constraint where it can actually account for about 15 to 40% of their annual per capita annual income. And even if a family is able to afford it, right, the access goes to the male member of the family. It doesn't go to the female member of the family. So access becomes a really very important issue. The second significant issue are the challenges of harassment and e-teasing. It is a societal problem. It is evident. It is quite evident in all conversations with women cyclists that this harassment is quite a big challenge and quite a big hindrance for them to consider cycling as a mode of transport, as a mode of access and a mode of transport. There has been studies done. I recall one particular one by the University of Minnesota, I think in 2018 or something, where they did a comparative analysis between male cyclists and female cyclists. And what they found was that female cyclists are highly likely to experience things like where vehicles come way closer to them than male cyclists. And they are 4 times more likely to experience that than the male cyclists. So this is an inherent sort of a behavior that really needs to be dealt with. The third aspect is that the need. There's a lack of data on how women. Disaggregated data on how women conduct their trips and how males conduct their trips. Being primary caretakers in the household, they tend to have multiple responsibilities. They will not have a trip which is just like from workplace to home. They will have a trip which is workplace to shopping to healthcare to home, or multiple stops and multiple requirements where they might need to take they might need to carry bags, they might need to carry their children, and the kind of infrastructure and the products that are available today in terms of cycling, like Professor Verma mentioned, doesn't necessarily allow for that. And if I'm not able to kind of address my need with the product that I have, there's highly likely that I'm not going to use that mode. I'm going to try and figure out another mode, maybe share rickshaw, which allows me to carry multiple things while addressing my task. But if we have to address these things, these things. The safety aspect is one significant one. Even while when we provide safe cycling tracks, disaggregated cycling, separated cycling tracks, protected cycling tracks on heavily transverse roads, it really gives a sense of protection. It gives a sense of security for them. They know they will be safe. Having said that, it does not necessarily mean that the route itself is safe for women. So even the route selection, where we put the infrastructure, needs to be evaluated in terms of how safe it is for all its users. Cycle tracks that go through deserted locations of town may be very functional, but may not be something that women cyclists will tend to utilize or can utilize. So infrastructure planning is definitely an aspect that we could look at. Lighting, placemaking, etc., associated with infrastructure planning would really help. Providing in terms of addressing the accessibility to cycles, it really helps to have multiple models, because everyone's ability to spend or invest something in a mode like this is different. Rental models seem to have proven quite useful over the years, because it's easier to spend a limited amount of money for the day, especially for daily workers, right? You're not sure if the next day I'm going to get paid, or if I'm going to have work the next day. Spending limited amount of money every day on a rental sort of a basis would be more accessible to me than any other mode. Than any other model. The last point I would like to make is, programs where it is established, where it is like buddy programs, which allows women cyclists to travel, feel safer while they travel, is also something that could be explored. So I'm just going to stop there. These are some of the ideas from the top of my head that would actually help in enabling a lot more women cyclists.
Thank you, Sadeep. And to top it off, we will have Satya. Want to hear some comments. I know he is a lot into fitness, environment. He has done a lot of work in his constituency area on encouraging children to walk to school. So and he has done surveys on safety. And there are a lot of similarities between walking and cycling in that sense. So maybe he can throw some light on that aspect as well. And also, what does he think about? There are earlier studies that have shown that it was considered socially unacceptable for women to cycle, and possibly that's one of the reasons that they did not cycle. But that kind of feedback did not come back to us, maybe because it is Bangalore, maybe because people are much more forward thinking and there is a lot more equality in relationships. But safety is a core concern. It was not so much whether it was socially acceptable or not. But I think both Professor Verma and Sudeep have raised this important question about design. And how do you make the cyclist at the center of it and design products which meet the use cases of the cyclist? Because so far, whether it's a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler or any mobility vehicle, there is something thrust upon by a central manufacturer, and people have to just consume whatever is available. With EV coming in, we have seen a lot more flexibility and use cases driving design of EVs for specific purposes and specific use cases. So Satya, would you like to comment on any or some of these aspects?
Sure. Thanks to B.PAC and DLT for having me on. I do agree on the form factor and all of those things, because when we buy a scooter, it always comes with something you can carry stuff in, right? But when you buy a cycle, somehow it only comes with a seat. You can't carry anything. Everything becomes an additional attachment. And for the people in the lower economic strata, they need to carry kids, they need to carry stuff. It's not an exercise tool. All these cost additional. So a standard cycle of 3,000-4,000 rupees, a baby seat itself costs 3,000 rupees, the equivalent of the cycle itself. So we need to look at how do we make these at scale. I've been talking to some cyclists about looking at pannier bags and things like that, which can be made cheaper. Some of them have innovated and made, but we can go back and create an economy around making useful things at lower cost for people. But this is like one interesting thing that came out of your study, or two, that is pertinent here, is the traveling distance on an average is around 5.8, you say, between 5 and 8, which is also, it's around 10 for the cycle to work people who are IT workers mostly. So which means there is a lot of medium trips that are happening. And the second thing is, for the livelihood, people who use cycle for livelihood, it's a dwindling bunch. The minute they earn enough, they will switch over to a motorbike, because that is what is aspirational. Cycling is just the lowest cost, which is also borne out by a study, is that it's only because they can't afford to pay for a motor vehicle that they are using the bicycle. So you're going to continue to see a shift onto the motor vehicle. Whereas on the top, I'm trying to see how we can get the people who have access to the motor vehicle to get off and get back onto the bicycle. So I would agree with Madam Manjula's point of trying to build infrastructure. This is very important. It is a very powerful signaling mechanism, which Sudeep also said. It does take a lot of, it provides a lot of security for people along the large corridors, because once the surface of the road improves, the speed of the vehicles also go up and segregation becomes key. And more people getting on, we have to have political will to allocate a certain percentage of space to the bicycle and to modes like the bus. It's no longer about show me the market of where the people are. It's more about like affirmative action, you can say, right? There is so much of negative externality that has been imposed by motor vehicles. It is time to give up some space and say we need to provide equity on the streets for the lower income as well, and for anybody who chooses a more sustainable mode, because they're doing their bit. And the least we can show as a mark of respect is give them the space on the street and not punish them for the good choices they are making. I just call it responsible citizenship to provide that space and not, it will take some time to creep in. We are finding that, like ma'am was saying, over the last 6 years, we have made a lot of progress from the community side, at least among the set of people that I work with, in order for the lower income people not to feel pressured into choosing a lifestyle which is costly, not just to themselves, but to the society at large. We have to have the people who are causing the problem also set an example by switching over and saying, it's time to, give the space on the street and not complain about that, and try to live with this means, because we've chosen a more, different lifestyle, which is not conducive to society. So there's a lot of societal norms that we need to shift and change. And most of our effort needs to go into that. And of course, on the infrastructure side, that is bare minimum, right? If you look at the streets in Bangalore, about 14,000 kilometers, 2,000 are arterial and subarterial, which is like maybe 20% of Bangalore. Those are definitely high-speed roads. And even if you build 200 kilometers a year, it will take us a decade to cover that 20% of Bangalore with. And we are only talking 7 BBMP area. The BD area is maybe double or triple. So we need to build at a rapid pace, and we can do that. The concrete roads came up so fast in the last 1-2 years. We built 100-200 kilometers of that. So if the people in power make up their mind, and it is possible to push that. What is key in all of these things to tie together is the Active Mobility Act. I think, ma'am, it's a time to request that we push that, because the rights of cyclists and the people who do good to the city need to be protected, and it needs to be codified in some way, so that we get them the rights that they need, and then we can see the mind shift happening. We cannot keep encouraging more unsustainable behavior on the large vehicle side. So we all need to, both as society and as administrators, try and push for rights of people, for safety of people on the streets, and see how we can share more spaces. I would just leave it at that, Revati.
Okay. Thank you, Satya. That is very good. Right now, I will take on some questions to make this interactive that we have received. One of them, I think it is, this person says, I stay in Belandur, ORR. My observation is that people who commute for work, low-income group, hardly take the bicycle lanes. It might be due to multiple reasons. They are either unaware that it is for two-wheelers or cyclists. They think it is for two-wheelers. They don't realize it is for cyclists. Cycle lanes need to be marked and properly maintained. Ma'am, would you like to comment on?
No, that is that is an issue that has been highlighted by many people. So the cycle lanes are still, partly they are still being constructed and done. And this is something which we have also requested the implementing agency to do so, to put signage and also put the signage in a proper place where it is visible, and to also put stencil of cycle mark on the at every 50 meters on the cycle lane. Because though it is a cycle lane, as we understand that many two-wheelers are getting into it and picking up an argument with the cyclists. So hopefully in the next few days or it should be done.
That is
I
fantastic.
agree with this point. Definitely that's an issue.
The other point that they are raising is, the road sweeping machines are not, in fact, this person has even sent a picture of it. There's a lot of rubble. Sweeping machines are not properly sweeping the lanes. So maybe in addition to this, some manual sweeping or some way to ensure that, the lane is smooth. Because if you have some rubble or small pebbles, people are going to lose their balance. So it becomes extremely important.
Yeah, what happens is the road sweeping machines are big, they can't get into the cycle lanes.
Right.
In fact, one of the thought process we are having, and probably we have actually made a problem statement out of it, and we want to actually float it shortly with the support of the ITBT department of the government. Can we have cycle lane sweeping machines? Because after all, robotics, etc., has really kind of improved a lot in these times. So we want to actually float a challenge and see whether any from the startup ecosystem in Bangalore, somebody would come out with a machine that can help in sweeping the cycle lanes. So, but till then it has to be manual. But the problem with the manual sweeping is that, see, you have to be really after the concerned people to sweep it. So there is both technical and with the short-term solution of cleaning it up has to be definitely done by the BBMP or the contractor responsible for its maintenance. But long-term, we are also looking whether we could tap some innovation and come out with some product that can really be, state-of-the-art and suited and appropriate for the cycle lane maintenance.
Right. So there is Varun who has said, I think his point is largely similar, that it was in fact Varun who made this point that people may be unaware, and you have already responded saying that you're having markings organized. Diksha says we can promote PBS by making it more safe and developing the required infrastructure. It will remove the challenge of vehicle ownership for them. What has been your experience on public bike sharing? The government did try something out like that. Could you share with the group your experiences?
See, we did sometime in the past, DALT did, float a permit system for dockless cycles, which are on through this public bike sharing system. But I think most of them kind of, after initial enthusiasm, they are no longer there. So again, we made it a continuous thing now, so that if you are you can, it's not like a tender where you have to apply for a permit in a particular window. We have now made it continuous process through the government Seva Sindhu portal. People can apply for the permit. So we have opened it up, and we hope people will take advantage of it. One issue people raise is, and we also see there are a lot of new form factors coming in. You have traditional cycle, you have electric cycle with pedal assist, then suddenly you have electric cycle, and then you have something which is cannot be called an electric cycle. You can call it as a scooter, but maybe a different version of a scooter. So everything, this micro mobility forms are also coming in and claiming to be what you call cycling, modes. So there is a bit of a kind of a challenge before us. So we did go through various regulations of various cities across the world, and came to the conclusion that active mobility is a different cup of tea altogether. So we need to put active mobility on a different plane, and maybe all other micro-mobility forms at a different plane. So therefore, what we are now focusing on is active mobility, which means a traditional bicycle or a bicycle with pedal assist. And that is where the infrastructure and all that is being, will have to be focused upon and improved. Now, there are micro-mobility forms, but we cannot really call them cycles in any way. And this was for a long time what do you call a dilemma. What is it? Is it a cycle or not a cycle kind of a dilemma? But we have gone by the experience of others and have got stuck to it. But unfortunately, we are not finding, we hope, and we have just floated, so we hope response will be good. And a lot of public bike sharing people will come forward. In fact, with WRA sometime back, we did a webinar also where we looked at PBS, PBS system providers across the country. We had a good discussion with them and taking their suggestions also we have floated. So we are awaiting the response now.
Yeah, I think this is a very challenging and a moot point, that there are so many form factors. And there has been one question again from Varun, who says that, Swiggy, Zomato, and all of them, they can have used significant portion of their delivery boys could be using cycles. The difference there is they are responsible for their performance indicator, the speed of delivery, timeliness of delivery. They have to sometimes carry weight. So there are a combination of factors. And so those are all things that we have to understand. What are the use cases? These livelihood cyclists are using it for specific purposes. If they are using it to deliver items, or their performance depends on the time, how much time they take to deliver, and they're going to do multiple deliveries during the day. They do typically 15 deliveries a day. If it is micro mobility, 15 to 20 deliveries a day. That means that level of speed they must have, and they must have that kind of facility to cycle. So that's definitely, those are things to consider. And when we look at micro mobility, yes, that conflict between, is it a cycle or is it an pedal assisted two-wheeler? Is it an EV? Is it a cycle? These are all questions that are coming up, and these are not easy answers. On the one hand, we don't want ICE type two-wheelers flooding the market. We would prefer to have, if you are having two-wheelers, then you would prefer to have them as EV. But then where do they, which part of the restricted road do they travel on? So these are all some very, very fundamental questions with no easy answers, especially in situations like Bangalore, fully built up. You're trying to retrofit all solutions, you're trying to retrofit many form factors. I guess these are not going to be easy answers. So we'll leave that as at the moment, but logistics and micro mobility to deliver packages and goods and services is definitely a big emerging category, because they are not in a position to use public transport. So, and we need to recognize that these people will be on the road, and how do we ensure that they also get a certain road space, but at the same time do not either impinge on the cyclists nor impinge on the other motorized vehicles, because they themselves would be endangering their own lives. So these are all very complicated solutions. I think some more thought on urban planning, urban design of our roads as new use cases are emerging would be very, very critical in future as well. Any other questions, Pooja? I'm not seeing more questions. Pooja, are there any questions that you want to read out?
That's all, ma'am. Like some are kind of repetitive, again, more on form factors.
Yeah.
I
So
couldn't.
for all
Yeah.
the viewers there, if there are some additional questions, we would like you to post it so that we can get some more questions. I think meanwhile I can. I want to put this question to Madam Manjula. we spoke about some kind of incentives for women. What do you think would be certain incentives would be that would be relevant, uh, which the government would be willing to look at? We think creating greater ownership, at least in cycles, would allow equity of access to certain kinds of jobs, which may be not very high paying, but therefore they cannot afford their own vehicles. But having a cycle definitely would be helpful. So, do you think something like this would be acceptable to the government? Because successive governments in Karnataka have been focusing on women and women empowerment.
In fact, we do have schemes implemented by government, but mostly in for school children. A lot of girl children were given cycles in many cities. These were schemes which are kind of focused on students, girl students studying in schools and colleges. We don't have any scheme right now for women who are working and who belong to the category of, let's say, you mentioned lower income groups and who may need to kind of own a cycle. But this is something which we need to talk to the concerned agencies. We have the women welfare, women and child development department. We have women development corporation. This is something we need to explore with them, whether there is any chance of any such. It won't be free, you can't have freebies everywhere. So it may be, like Women Development Corporation as a scheme under which they have a loan or a subsidy, because they have many schemes where autos are given and things like that. Similarly, is there a scheme or can there be a scheme? There is no scheme right now. Can there be a scheme where anyone who wants to own a cycle can avail some loan and some subsidy? Is a question that we would have to take up with them. But that's only one portion of the thing. The other portion is actually a lot of women may also not be, would not have learned cycling also. So that's
Right.
another thing we want to also look at, whether we could have cycling training for women especially. But that is something which, as government, we can't do that. We have to tie up with various other agencies. So that is something we are looking at, whether we can train people, maybe maids or people who can who may want to use a cycle but who are not trained to use it, or who don't have the skill of using. Can we train them is the second issue. But right now, in both the cases, at least in the case of a scheme from the government, we don't have any. But I am quite aware of some private initiatives. There was one initiative in Pina, but I have to check up what happened to that. The large number of government workers, and there was an initiative to provide cycles to women. Maybe we need to take that forward, but right now I would say as DULT, we have not really thought about any cycle subsidy scheme, but maybe that is something which we may need to think about for the future.
I'd just like to add, Revati, that that's the one ma'am is mentioning is with the Greenpeace team. We are working with them to see how we can include some amount of cycle training and workshops as well for the garment workers in Lagere. We are talking about seeing how we can rope in more people. That's a very good suggestion of trying to hold camps and these kind of initiatives to improve.
As you can see, it is very evident that women cyclists, their age is much lower than the male cyclists. And it's very clear that as they age, they drop off and they don't seem to cycle as much. So encouraging girl children to learn cycling at a very early age and continuing to cycle and own a cycle so that it becomes second nature is an important, I think it's an important aspect. And
Sorry, Revati, actually just wanted to share one interesting thing. See, it also depends. Like I have gone to West Bengal, this one Durgapur, and I was so surprised to see women in a sari with an umbrella in one hand cycling, and that image is actually so.
Oh, you should have taken a picture. We should post that actually to encourage.
At that point, I didn't have a camera, or I didn't realize that I should take a photo even with my phone. Perhaps I was mesmerized. I said, "Okay, come on, how can you do that?" So I think it is a question of, we talked about attire and all. Definitely, it's not comfortable to ride a cycle in sari unless you are a very expert cyclist or something like that. But acceptance is there today. I think the acceptance of change in attire of women is very much there today. You see, many years back, you wouldn't find so many women in Karnataka wearing salwar kameez. In the south, you really don't find women wearing salwar kameez. Today, it is everywhere, omnipresent, you can say. So it is changed. Even in offices, we find people come in trousers and things like that. It's changing. I think what is important is the training that we need to do to ensure that from, as you said, young age women cycle. Thank you.
Can I just add, just want to call upon employers also to look at this. For a person who's earning 5,000 and gets a bicycle, which is 3,000, it's 1 month's worth of wages. It's easily possible for employers to offer cycles to people. It's the same with IT workers who go in. They get laptops, they get car loans, they get so many benefits. Why can't the company sponsor a 15,000 rupee cycle? It's less than the cost of a cell phone these days. There's no excuse for 1 crore people of Bangalore not to have a cycle with them. It costs less than a cell phone, which you change every 2 years. I think it's very important for us to realize that the businesses need to participate in this and start providing incentives in some form or the other, encourage people to come. That's when the attitude actually changes. That's when the adoption actually picks up, because they have completely, they can build car parking lots worth thousands of square feet, but they can't provide a bicycle parking and welcome them. I think this is very important for the businesses in Bangalore to kind of start pushing this, and that's where the change happens. And why can't this be a joining bonus for a lot of people? It's very simple to do.
Completely agree with you, Satya. I think that's where the change. That's one of the points where the change needs to start happen. Providing it should at least be an option for employees to avail that as a mobility option.
Also, identifying locations where you have clusters. I mean, we have done the GIS mapping also. Of where are these clusters of destinations where these livelihood cyclists go. I think focusing on that, augmenting the safe parking, facilities in those, clustered locations. These are small things that we can really do add on to improve the adoption and, comfortable use of cycling.
Rightly said, Professor Ashish Verma. In fact, we are preparing the parking action area parking plans now, and we are trying to ensure that not only for cars and two-wheelers, you have parking for cycles and also for micro mobility, so that you have these along that. So it's easy for people to park there instead of all the micro mobility vehicles parking on footpaths. As it is, we don't have very wide footpaths, so that's what is already we have designing and planning that, and that's what we want to take it forward in the parking plan.
And hopefully, as all of us are eagerly looking at BMLTA bill to get passed and become a reality. Hopefully, that should ensure mainstreaming of active mobility mode related planning and policy aspects in all aspects of land transport. I think that's where we should really go. Every new road, new layout, anything that you do new, how do you have a clear mainstreaming of these provisions as an integral part of the planning and design process? Because I keep seeing that while it's not easy to do things in the core areas of the city or congested areas of the city, but when we look at what's happening in the newer layouts, newer areas, we are actually doing much worse in those areas, in spite of the fact that we are aware of the requirements, such requirements. So hopefully this can be
Yeah, actually Satya kind of mentioned about it. We have actually brought out a draft active mobility bill, and which is based on what Singapore has come out with. So hopefully in the next, we will put it up for public feedback, etc. shortly. So because as you correctly said, what about the newer roads? When the road is being taken for development, when the layout is being formed and roads are being done. So all this is not forming a network. And if you don't have network, and if you talk to cyclists, they see it's not that they're just in the middle of nowhere. He or she needs a network.
Yeah, we keep saying this. We keep saying this. Yes.
And that is what we also keep telling people who say, where are the cyclists? Because see, when we had only one small length of metro line, where were the riders?
Yeah.
So always there is something called network effect.
Yes.
That will come only when you complete a network. It can't happen when you have a small stretch of 17 kilometers of cycle lane, and then we say, where are the cyclists? It has to be connected to some place. So,
and we have, I mean, this whole network effect we have simulated enough in our models also to showcase its importance and requirement. It's really high time that we should see it on the ground now.
Yeah, the network, that brings me into another logical question. The network effects for active mobility for either walking or cycling would be a little different from network effect for motorized transport, where at least it is somewhat localized. So if you take a very active hub where there is a lot of traffic and you want to encourage a lot more cycling, then around that area, if we can create good networks in a localized way, you would still encourage a lot of cyclists, because anyway, people use cycles maximum for under 5 to 6 kilometers. That is the, so you don't, to create that network effect, you can still do it in a smaller radius. So
Yeah.
I think seriously looking at this from the point of view of urban design and design of infrastructure, road infrastructure, and safety in junction points, parking spaces. So if we can take a model in certain area, one area, and look at all these points that have been raised and try to see how can we create that, I'm sure this would be this might yield some results and really give us some more insights.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is what Duality is doing through Suma kind of projects. Our idea of network effect when we think about active mobility is in the context of putting it together with public transport. And I keep saying this, I said in the initial remark also. Obviously, there are limits to the distances that people can use cycle for as an access mode or as a main primary mode. So unless you bring this a whole picture, network picture of how this is integrated with public transport. So you have these localized requirements of travel within neighborhood. A lot of that is happening on two-wheelers that you can bring back to walk and cycling. But at the same time, if you look at the commute requirements for longer distances, unless you put this together in perspective with public transport, and when we say integration with public transport, it's about the park and ride facility for cycles at the public transport nodes, or it's about having planning and design of, say, these MRTS systems where you integrate the station designs or even provisions in coaches to whatever extent possible to enable people to use cycles as a mode. And that's what I think we're referring to when we say network effect.
So yeah, I think this is these are some phenomenal insights.
Revati, can I add something here?
Yes, please.
So in fact, what you said is interesting, because we had this PBS, we implemented PBS in Mysore. So we got a lot of data from it. And when we analyzed, we realized that most people were actually moving in their neighborhood. See, generally we think we connect various alternate activity centers like zoo and some mall and some park, and we expect people to be, using the cycles to go there. It was not happening that way. They were, going in cluster, the neighborhood cluster. So the point you made is very interesting and very pertinent. Probably we will have to encourage PBS in a neighborhood cluster. And if through this, I want to request, if there are any PBS operators who are listening on, they can feel free to come forward, and we can kind of try to create a neighborhood cluster along with that. Thank you.
That's nice. I hope there are people listening and coming forward to talk about it. So we spoke about a whole lot of initiatives about what we can do in terms of infrastructure, I think it's time that we move forward on communication. One of the things that came out very clearly is that this is being viewed, cycling is being viewed as a poor man's transport mode, and not really as something aspirational. So as soon as people can afford, affordability improves, which is what we want people to have, greater disposable income, immediately they move to motorized transport. So communication has a very, very big role. I think the government has done a stupendous job about this whole corona and communicating the safe behavior, safe protocols on corona. I think the government has done a phenomenal job. Can we think of something at that scale where you really promote actively cycling and talk about it as aspirational, talk about it as, and maybe incentivize people in terms of recognizing the star cyclists or something like that, who are livelihood cyclists? Because those are the larger numbers. The few fitness enthusiasts are not really the large numbers. They will anyway do it even because they care for the environment, they want sustainability. But really to make this very, very aspirational, how can we do that? And how can we all stakeholders are here and many others are listening. How can we together make this whole cycling an aspirational experience?
Revati, actually, the cycle day started with that kind of an objective.
Right.
So it was an idea that came from a community of people from outside government. It is not a
Right.
that came from the government, and they came together, and then the government and the community came together, and we have had I think 6 to 7 years of cycle days with more than 50 odd. 500 odd events and 50 odd communities participating.
In fact, we are having this discussion only because something like this happened. Otherwise, nobody was even discussing cycling.
So unfortunately,
that is the success.
Unfortunately, due to COVID, it got a break. So probably if things improve after November, we will again start, restart that event. So that is one way of creating communication, because you have to see what happens generally is that we have all these many workshops, etc. We talk about active mobility and so on and so forth. But sometimes we may be kind of, as people say, preaching to the converted. In the sense, we all are on the same side and we are talking about it. So we need to take the dialogue to the people who may be on the other side, who may not be agreeing with us and getting them onto our side. So that will require a lot of, in addition to communication in terms of, let's say, as you mentioned, that COVID-19 like kind of a thing, we also need a lot of grassroots work to happen. And probably that is also the way to reach maximum number of communities and get maximum number of people onto cycles. And I will ask Satya to talk about it. I think is a better person to talk about it. Satya, over to you.
No, I agree with Revati ma'am. I think the cycle days made a massive impact in the with a lot of communities in Bangalore. Close to 50 community partners have been influenced because of the way ma'am took it to the community, to the local level, and said we will do it in each area so that people understand. So today we have a lot of people talking about it only because of what the DLT did in those days, partnered with communities, and Suma is an offshoot of that as well. But the second thing is very interesting. What we are doing also is setting up this Council for Active Mobility is to spread the message of this My 15-Minute City, right? What we're trying to say is, why don't we look at our neighborhood and start adopting more walking and cycling and try to avoid motor vehicles more. This is a small way you can get started, right? You don't need to motivate yourself at 5 a.m. in the morning to go for a recreational ride. You anyway have to buy groceries. You anyway have to go and do some sorties. Try to, walk for some of those trips, and maybe out of 10, you do 3 walk and 3 cycle, you've converted 60% of your trips into actively mobile modes. So these are campaigns that we're taking forward, and we're doing it with communities, the Suma communities that are actually some, say, 7 communities which are doing these things. They are also trying to do these events so that the social change angle is blended with the infrastructure and they go together in some way. So these are experiments that will take some time to mature, and people will start understanding how to utilize this in the right way, how to mix these two, and why setting of social norms are very important now. Because what drives the livelihood cyclist is different. You saw, it's not about climate change. For him, it's about today I have to go and earn my bread and butter, and the faster and the most efficient and the most cost-effective way I do it, I'll use that. If something else is available cheaper than a cycle, I will use that as well. But whereas for the people who have the ability to have a motor vehicle, it's completely different. They're maybe tired of it, and they are the ones who are causing the problem. So we try to go and tell them, look, don't set these aspirational goals because somebody else is trying to emulate you. There are other tier 2 cities trying to say, I want to be like Bangalore. And what is Bangalore doing? So everybody looks up to somebody else, and we have to start becoming examples in many places. So I think we're trying to work very closely with all departments concerned, whether it is BBMP or DULT or anybody else willing to listen, to say that in our heads, we need to churn this around and start looking at what city are we building, and it's in our hands. And the small things that we do really, really matter. And trying to change somebody's mind is just about them realizing the value of this. The more we drive that in simple ways, not about global climate change, but about your thing tomorrow, your contribution tomorrow, and it just rubs off. So we're trying to make those small moves as well.
Yeah, I think
more people should join it though.
Just to add, I think communication is definitely a very important aspect. We often neglect it. I always remember, Manjula ma'am, to remember the Indo-Dutch cycling workshop that we had, and that wonderful video that the municipality of Amsterdam has prepared, and they showcase it to market Amsterdam as a cycling destination. I think that's this is Amsterdam, and this is
I am Amsterdam.
Yes.
I'm together.
And this is my bike. So that's a very wonderful way of communicating and projecting cycling as a very comfortable, all-purpose, all age group mode. Yeah, I mean, there's so much of message in that video. I every time I see, and I use it quite often in even my lectures and a lot of capacity building programs that I do. I think something like that, which is more locally flavored in our context, could be interesting. And I've seen some of the videos DLT has done and have also disseminated on social media. For example, how looking from the eyes of women, public transport, how things can be, same things can be different. I think those kind of videos you have been doing very well. We can definitely think about preparing these kind of, good communication videos, projecting cycling as a mode that is comfortable for all purpose and other things. In fact, Professor Meghna, she really has a lot of ideas about marketing sustainable transport. Maybe sometime we can take more ideas from her and see how we can, effectively do better communication on these aspects. Thanks.
That's fantastic. I think I want to be mindful of time. We have about 4 minutes left. Sudeep, would you like to make any comments?
Sure. I think
we have not spoken much about health and environment and the consciousness around that. Of course, for a livelihood cyclist, it is not really, that is not their first concern, but really they are the majority users, right?
I don't think health. So I mean, look at who are the people who are the captive audience. They're people who are daily wage workers. Health and especially health consciousness is something that you would ask somebody who has a sedentary lifestyle, who's sitting at a table, essentially not people that we have not people that we have surveyed, not at least a majority of the people we have surveyed. So I don't see that that is being the focus of the conversation. I think the topics that we've covered in this call definitely are more attuned to, are more relevant to the group of people that we're talking about. The one other aspect that I would like to bring up is, and it's been mentioned in many ways, is the fact that this making a cycling aspirational, or making a cycling friendly city is not just an infrastructural change. It is actually a cultural change, and to bring about a change in culture requires persistence, requires many aspects, including communication, including all the activities Satya has been engaging in, including the infrastructure, including the infrastructure as well, and to get people to accept that cycling is a dedicated space for cycling is as important as a dedicated space of vehicles is going to take some time, but it needs to start somewhere. And I think this is where we have started in Bangalore, and we have started very strong. And I think we just need to make sure that we don't give up, and it needs to be pushed very hard. And in some time, it's going to be very unnatural to not have a cycle infrastructure, a new infrastructure that comes up. I think that's where we need to be, we need to get at.
Right. And just one more point I want to make. Yes, I fully agree, Sudeep, that the livelihood cyclist category, health and environment, is definitely not their priority. But the fear that they will move out of cycling as soon as they have little disposable income, and therefore to keep it aspirational, is still something that we should all work towards in overall communication. That's not going to change so easily just because we communicate, but I think glorifying some of that would be helpful. I think glorifying livelihood cyclists, because we can glorify middle class, upper middle class people, but that doesn't help because they have other modes of transport as well. But glorifying the cyclists who are in that livelihood category and talking about it and making people aware, I think maybe as part of the videos, we may also want to think about something like that. Talking about the point Professor Verma said, sometimes we have to localize. We have multiple themes to communicate around this. And one of the videos would be, it's so lovely to see, and yet I do it for a need, necessity. I do it out of necessity, but it's also good for health. It's also good for environment. I'm saving so many things, and things around that. So I think that sort of.
Just a small thought. Many times when people discuss and ask about what kind of future you think about of mobility for Bangalore, I often say that to look into the future of Bangalore, we should look into the past of Bangalore, the Bangalore of 60s and 70s, when walking and cycling was so seamless. Many more people used to cycle. I think many of you who have lived in the city for quite long would know, those days of Bangalore when it was. So I think that's what the future we should really think about, bringing that past of Bangalore back into the future. I think that's really the vision that we should have.
Yeah, I think on that note, I can share my personal example that I used to cycle from Alsur to Mount Carmel College every day to college. And it was quite acceptable to cycle. Yes. Most of my friends used to use buses, but I prefer to use the cycle. Yes. But I don't think I can think of cycling today, though I used to use it very actively. And those days were also the days when you had those little baskets in front. And I remember I used to carry my younger sister in that little basket, or I used to do errands for my family, buy stuff, but you don't see that anymore. You don't even see baskets anymore. So cycles are no longer functional. They've become more an elite concept today.
Yeah, that was the quality of life. I think that's what we should really bring back.
Yes.
As the future of mobility.
Okay. So this brings us to the close of our discussion. I think, Ma'am Manjula, if you have any closing comments, we are happy to take, but we are we are done with our time, and I think we have taken all the questions we have received. And we may just do a gallery view so that we can take a quick picture of all of us together. And somebody can take a picture, I think. We can take if everybody can put their video on, we will get onto the gallery mode and take a quick picture. Any more people? Yeah, having all the pictures? Yes. Ma'am, any further comments before we close? Any last comments?
No, I mean, we have spoken so much about Bangalore, but I just also want to say there are many two-tier cities which are also actively promoting, cycling infrastructure, and we are working with them. And the encouraging feature has been that recently Davangere came on their own, and they said we want to scale up our cycling network. So probably we may have two-tier cities pointing out the way for Bangalore also. So not just following it, but also leading by example. So that's it. Thank you.
Right. So with that, we bring this discussion to a close, and thank you, Pooja, for chasing all of us down. And she has spent several sleepless nights and sleepless days and trying to get the survey underway. And our auto drivers who worked relentlessly finding these elusive cyclists and catching hold of 604 people was not easy, but they've done it, and kudos to all of them for having participated in this. And thank you all for actively participating in today's discussion. I think we got some very, very nice insights today as well. We may just be including some of the insights as well today very quickly. And our report is available on the website for all the viewers who are interested. And with that, Pooja, can we close?
Yes, ma'am, sure. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks,
so thank you
thanks for
very much.
inviting.
Thank you. Thank you, Revati. Thank you, Pooja.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Yes.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.